All right, so in this video today, we are looking at our practice methods, okay? So your practice methods are basically ways in which athletes can, or just people in general, can practice skills and hopefully move through the stages of skill acquisition faster. They'll move faster if they apply the right practice method, depending on what stage they're at, okay? So let's do it. All right, so here's our first one. So we've got six to go through today. Let's massed practice, okay? Massed practice, doing something en masse. Long blocks of training without breaks, okay? For example, taking a basketball out to the court and shooting free throws and three-point shots. That looks like a naughty word. Shots for 30 minutes without rest, okay? So all you're doing is saying, all right, well, coach tells you, or you do it yourself. You take your ball out, you shoot a hoop. Pick the ball up, shoot the hoop. Pick the ball up, shoot the hoop. No rest, you just keep shooting. This type of practice is best for associative and autonomous learners, okay, who have already got they've already gone through the cognitive stage. They know how to shoot a ball, all right? Now we just want lots of repetition to ingrain some good movement patterns, and also they can get more practice because they don't need the breaks, all right? And they don't need to have as much mental fatigue to think about how to do it. They're just doing it. All right, so now we've got our distributed practice. I should have said at the start of the video, these things are gonna go in pairs most of the time, all right? So mass practice is the opposite to distributed practice, all right? So if you wanna write that in your book somewhere, that would probably be a good idea. Because then when we talk about this in an exam type situation, you would say that XYZ skill is mass practice. It can't be massed and distributed practice at the same time because they're opposites. So distributed practice is short blocks of training with regular breaks or changing of activity. For example, to keep with the basketball theme, 5 free throws, then we'll do 5 layups, then we'll have a break, drink break, orange, whatever. Then we'll have 5 three-point shots. Then we might do 2 laps of dribbling around the court. Then we might have another break, have a Kit Kat, etc. And then you just keep moving on, all right? So this type of training is best for cognitive type learners, all right, or people who are less experienced for a couple of reasons. Number one, if you went and told someone who is a younger learner or less experienced learner, go and shoot hoops for 30 minutes, they're going to get bored. They don't see the point in it. They're not going to achieve anything. They may not even get any better because they don't have the movement patterns behind it, all right? But a cognitive learner who is in that learning stage, who is probably going to not have as much discipline, this type of practice is good for them because it keeps it interesting, all right? Like I look at my daughters, for example, they're young, and if I went and told my daughter to go and shoot netball hoops for 30 minutes, after about 5 minutes, she would probably be like, how long have I got left? I'd be like, 25 minutes. She'd be like, oh, I'm bored. But if I did this, I'm like, okay, let's shoot 5 hoops and then let's do some passing practice and some movement practice, all right? That keeps it interesting, all right? Keeps it spicy, all right? So therefore, and people and athletes that are more interested in things are more likely to stick with it, and therefore they do more training and they get better, faster. So that's distributed practice. All right, so our next one is whole practice. So whole practice of a skill. So this will go hand in hand with the next one, which is part practice. So whole practice is practicing a skill in its entirety from start to finish, all right? Example, a cricketer completing their run-up and bowling a ball, all right? So if a pace bowler wanted to do some practice on their pace bowling, they would need to complete the whole run-up, bowl the ball, see the result, pick the ball up, walk back to their mark, and do that over and over and over again, all right? This type of practice is best for associative and autonomous learners, so you can think that this actually goes really well with our massed practice at the start, and you're going to start to see how we link these things together, unless there's a certain part of the movement that needs adjusting, which is what the next practice method is best for. All right, so the opposite of our whole practice is our part practice. Part practice is simply focusing on a particular part of a skill. So for example, a bowler, so once again, a cricket bowler, just working on their run up, okay? They mark it out and they run up and then they pretend, to to bowl a ball and make sure that their foot's in the right spot and it doesn't go over the line and it's not too short of the line, all right? They don't actually bowl the ball. All they're doing is doing the running up and going into motion. Then they go back to their mark and adjust the mark, and then they practice their run up again and again. Or, for example, the same bowler just working on their wrist flick of the release. So now they're not running up at all. They literally just stand at the crease, they roll their arm over and they flick the wrist and release the ball. And then they do that again and again. So part practice, right? So this is generally best for cognitive learners. So if you are new at a sport and you've never done, the sport before, you don't have prior experience, you can't vertically or horizontally transfer skills, we need to teach you the skill fundamentals, all right? So like throwing and catching, we just focus on throwing and catching, and then we might do throwing and catching while moving. So we're adding in different parts, but it's just a part, all right? When you're teaching like little kids how to catch a ball, and it's like, okay, well, if the ball is below your chest line, you want to make a bread basket with your hands like this, and you put your hands together like this, and then you catch the ball, okay? Part practice, all right? Experienced learners, such as people in the associative and autonomous stage, can use part practice though, if they need to adjust their technique. So maybe they're working on a certain thing, or maybe over time they've developed lazy or bad habits. So coach picks them up and says, we need to go back and we need to work on your run up again, because it could be better. But anyway, that's part practice. All right, so the next one is blocked practice, and this will go hand in hand with our randomized practice in a minute. So block practice is practice that uses the same conditions repeatedly, okay? Over and over and over again, you're doing the same thing from the same spot at the same, not at the same time, but in the same session. So for example, a league goal kicker, all right? He's practicing his kicking at training. Instead of going at various spots across the field, he puts his mark down on the field, or coach puts it down for him, Let's say it's just right of center. And he says, right, you are going to kick 30, you're going to do 30 practice kicks from this exact same spot, over and over again. Same distance, same angle, all right? This type of practice is best for people in the cognitive stage or earlier learners, so maybe even moving into associative stage, to build strong movement patterns and good technique. Okay, because they don't need to worry about other randomized things changing. All they know is that I need to practice this skill and it's just going to go from this spot, all right? Or like shooting free throws is another good example, but making sure that you are in the dead center of the free throw line every time. All right, and so our last one is random practice, okay? The opposite of blocked practice. This is practice of a skill with dynamic conditions. So remember, dynamic, the word, constantly changing. So the conditions constantly change. So once again, we use our goal kicker example this time. They're still doing 30 kicks in their training session, but every time it's from a different spot, all right? So they may like kick the ball and then coach will say, put the mark there. And then they kick the ball and then coach will say, put the mark there. And then coach will say, put the mark there and put the, whatever. You get the idea. Ideally, probably the coach is putting the next ball down for them in a different spot, but So this type of practice is best for our associative and autonomous learners, because in their game situations, they're forced to constantly apply skills in a variety of situations, okay? If our goal kicker only ever practiced from dead center all the time, and then it came to the game on the weekend and they had to kick one, from the wing, they're stuffed, all right? They need to have that variety of practice to apply the skills. So this is definitely more like game situations, and it is definitely better for our more experienced athletes, all right? If you are trying to teach a beginner person how to throw a ball, you're not going to constantly change the distance they need to throw it, and you're not going to constantly change whether they're moving or stationary. You're not going to constantly change the size of the ball. You're just going to give them a ball. You're going to stand about 2 meters from them and say, okay, let's throw and catch about 20 times, because it's better. Anyway, that's random practice, and that is actually the end of our practice methods video. Thanks.